Well, hello and welcome to Key Considerations for Google Cloud Backup. Today's webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am so excited to be your moderator for this discussion because this is an important one. There are so many options out there for you when you're thinking about protecting your data on Google Cloud, including native snapshots. And if you're making decisions about data protection and storage on Google Cloud, you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. Maybe, there's a lot of options. That means there's a lot of potential opportunities, but it also means there's a lot of potential obstacles in front of you. So today we're going to get the chance to talk with two expert speakers from Veeam who are going to walk us through the limitations of a snapshot-only approach and lay out some of the important considerations that you should have in mind when selecting and implementing a true backup and recovery solution for your Google Cloud workloads. This is going to be such an interesting discussion. I was chatting with our speakers a little bit this morning, and I know they're really excited to have a little bit of an interactive conversation with all of you today. So the more we all participate, the more fun and interactive it's going to be. And I love that. I love that on a Friday morning. What a great way to wrap up the week. I don't want to take a single minute away from this conversation. So I'm going to zip through just a few of the important housekeeping points, and then we'll get us on our way here. All right. So starting out, I'm going to draw your attention to two kind of different but equally important, it's my Law and Order reference for the day, two equally important parts of your webinar console. Let's start with that question section in the console, because as I just mentioned, the absolute best part of a webinar like this is the chance to ask questions directly of expert presenters like we have here with us today. So that means that now is the time to get involved, to post those questions, those comments, even if it's just, I want to hear more about that. Loved that point. Can you dig in on that? And our speakers will be watching for those types of comments, and they'll be reacting to them. So you get to help drive the ship today. You get to help take us in the direction that you want to go in. So make sure, get those comments, the questions, the ideas, whatever is on your mind, post those in that questions window. Now, the questions window is also a great place to say hi and hello if you haven't done that already. I see a lot of familiar names. I was going to say faces. I can't see your faces, but I assume you're all smiling back at me today. So say hi and hello, give a wave to the Actual Tech Media community. I do want to give a quick shout out here. If you are having any tech issues anytime throughout the webinar, that's also a great place to let the Actual Tech Media team know. Now, if you have not tried already, a browser refresh is going to get rid of any of the more common tech gremlins. So give that a shot first. But if that's not working for you, shoot us a message in that questions tab, and the Actual Tech Media crew will be there to help you out. Okay, so I said there was two separate but equally important things on your webinar console. So we started with the questions tab, and now we're going to head over to the handout section. So if you click into that handout section and scroll around, you're going to see some really exciting content to go along with the webinar today. In fact, if you click on that link to get started with Veeam, you can book a free trial, you can explore the platform. There's lots more resources there for you. So go click on that link and kind of dig in, save that tab for a little bit after the webinar today, because I promise you're going to want to do a little bit more exploration once we wrap here. Now, it is not just awesome content that we are giving away today. We also have a $300 Amazon gift card for you. So we'll do a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Now, if you've been here before, you know what I'm about to say next. You do need to be here live at the webinar in order to qualify for the prize. And all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, no problem. I don't expect you to have those memorized. They're long. You can head on over to that handouts tab that we were just chatting about, click in, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. All right, now not only does asking questions help steer the conversation, it's going to bring up the whole excitement of the entire webinar today, it is also a great chance to win a prize. So today we are offering a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked. We're going to review all the questions asked after we wrap today. So even if your question does not get asked live, if we don't get a chance to dig into it with our speakers here, there is still a chance to win. So get those questions coming in, because it's going to help direct the flow of the conversation. It's going to help direct our demo, which is coming up today. Some really cool stuff that you're going to hear from our speakers. So make sure to ask those questions, and then added side benefit, you are entered to win that $50 Amazon gift card. So that's a pretty good bonus there. All right. Well, I said I would keep it short and sweet, and we have. And I think it's time that we get this whole shebang rolling here. I am so excited to introduce you all to our speakers today. We're going to be hearing from Sam Nichols, Director Public Cloud Product Marketing at Veeam, and Andre Zalesko, or AZ, Technologist Product Strategy at Veeam. So let's get these guys out here with us. Hi, Andre. Hi, Sam. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, good morning, Jess. Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction. And a big thank you to AZ for joining us, as well as all of you dialing into this webinar. Like Jess says, we're really excited to talk to you guys today about key considerations for Google Cloud Backup. And, really this is going to be a number of best practices that you should be implementing within your Google Cloud environments. And then we'll kind of tie it into how Veeam can help you with addressing these issues and fulfilling those best practices. And then the pièce de resistance, aside from the $300 gift card, AZ has a fantastic demo lined up for you to show you, how you can protect Google Cloud workloads within your environment as just like a standalone Google Cloud backup product, as well as integrated with our flagship product, Veeam Backup and Replication. For those of you that have hybrid or multi-cloud products, are tired of managing multiple point products from multiple different vendors, get that all centralized under one platform, as well as a number of other benefits. And then just want to reiterate, as Jess says, we like to keep this as interactive as possible. So not only can you win a $50 gift card for asking the best question, you can also kind of get the information exactly the information it is that you want. A little bit scared about the best question. That might be a toughie, but hey, keep us on our toes and keep those ones coming in. So without further ado, let's jump right into the content. One of the things Jess mentioned at the beginning of the call was the proliferation of snapshots, right? This is actually from a recent report that we do called the Cloud Protection Trends Report that demonstrates 52% of cloud admins are relying on snapshots alone to protect their data. Snapshots are something that is built within the Google Cloud Platform as kind of a default, and I'm going to say this in air quotes, backup tool to help you protect your data. And it's not exclusive to just Google. AWS has their own snaps, Azure has their own snaps, and of course anything on premises has a lot of snapshotting mechanisms available to it as well. And when it comes to the management or let's just say the taking of those snapshots, you've got a number of different options at your fingertips. First one is the manual approach. You can go into the Google Cloud Console or whatever cloud console it is that you're using and actually choose to take those snapshots, move them, ultimately delete them through manual processes. That doesn't sound ideal to me, especially if you're dealing with an environment with tens, hundreds, if not thousands of instances in Google Cloud. It just doesn't scale, and it opens us up to errors and things like retention policy gaps, thinking something's protected when it's not, which is a leading cause behind data loss. So then a number of folks will then turn to scripts, so utilizing something like PowerShell or even APIs that Google presents to automate the taking of these snapshots. So that kind of helps us out a little bit with the scalability and elimination of manual processes, but by no means like a perfect solution. These cloud environments are incredibly dynamic. They are constantly changing. We've got different things like retention requirements aligning with compliance requirements. They just don't necessarily fit within that. So your third and final option from a first-party standpoint available from Google is a snapshot manager, which would be Google Cloud Backup and Disaster Recovery. Again, that can help automate everything, eliminate things like scripts. You get a nice little web UI to help manage everything there. But the thing is, all of these options are still predicated on the snapshot. And snapshots have their limitations. First and foremost is they are not independent of the workload it is that you are protecting. So if you have something, let's say like a compute engine, virtual machine that's connected to some persistent disk, the snapshot is going to be stored on that persistent disk. Therefore, it is not independent, and that opens us up to a number of things like cyber threats, right? If that account were to be, or that machine were to be compromised by something like ransomware, and they were to go and encrypt the persistent disk, or they chose to delete it, that's ultimately going to delete the snapshot attached to it as well. And when we have no snapshot, we have no recovery. So it certainly opens us up to a number of cyber threats, as well as other issues as well. The next piece is looking at things like expenses. Snapshots are expensive, especially long term, because they are attached or stored on that persistent disk. That is one of the most, if not the most, expensive storage option within Google Cloud, within AWS, within Azure. And if we have retention requirements, either mandated corporately or required by different governing bodies for whatever country or region we might live in, where we have to store data for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, doing that for hundreds, thousands of snapshots gets very, very expensive very, very quickly. And that leads to the nasty little thing that we all hate, overspend and bill shock. We start getting the knock on the door from our boss or from finance. Why is this costing so much? And the last piece is around challenging recovery, right? And the downtime associated with that. If we want to do, let's say, like a file level recovery from a snapshot, there are a number of manual processes that we have to go through. We have to boot a new machine, mount it, install the OS, then go and upload our snapshot to that, find the individual file, download that locally, terminate and uninstall everything. And that takes time. And again, is incredibly manual and challenging. And that's ultimately going to extend the cause for downtime and the impacts of downtime within your organization. So we ultimately need something to help overcome that. So the next few slides are really around addressing how to address these issues with purpose-built backup solutions that are for Google Cloud Platform, that leverage technologies that are native to Google Cloud Platform, so we can reap all of the benefits while still improving our data protection practices and strategy. And the first one is around how to address cyber threats, right? Looking at backup as a first-class citizen within any cybersecurity strategy. And I truly do advocate for this. Ransomware, as you guys all know, is probably top of mind. It is rampant throughout the industry. And ransomware is a hard one, right? Because it's not necessarily a one and done thing. We know that the vast majority of organizations have been fallen to a ransomware attack, but that just because it's happened once doesn't mean that it can't happen again. And we are put in the unfortunate situation where these bad actors have an infinite number of attempts on our environment, and they only have to be right one of those times in order to get in and gain access and start wreaking havoc. Now, us, the good guys in this situation, we have to fend off those infinite number of attacks and be right every single time. Now, we do have a number of proactive software and strategies and architectural best practices out there for Google Cloud and any other environments to help fend off cybersecurity threats. But not every solution is perfect. Not every human is perfect. We're all fallible. And ultimately, something's going to get through. And that's where backup and recovery, the secure backup and recovery, is really going to be critical to your strategy, right? So you have a verifiable recovery. You have that clean backup so you can get your environment back up to speed. So when it comes to data protection and secure data protection in Google Cloud, here are some of the best practices that you should be adopting. So firstly is the notion of least privilege access. We can hear a number of other vendors talk about this from like a zero trust standpoint, but least privilege access is ultimately making sure that only the people and the services and the resources have access to the things that they need and nothing that they don't. And we can control this through Google Cloud Identity and Access Management, or IAM. So making sure that any of these roles that we set within these accounts are very locked down. They only open up permission to the services or the task that that person or service needs access to, and nothing more. The next piece involved with that is credential auditing and rotation as well. So constantly auditing those credentials and those IAM roles that we have to make sure, are they still being used? Are they still valid? If not, remove them. And if they are, start to rotate some of the credentials as well. So, someone doesn't have an infinite number of times to get something right for one set of permissions, because if you rotate it, they kind of start back at square one. There's other considerations as well, things like role-based access control. especially when it comes to backup and recovery. So utilizing things like role-based access control can help. It can help make sure that good actors that might make mistakes, or internal employees that might go rogue, don't have access to administrative rights to the backup console. Maybe they only have specific access to certain privileges. And then finally is multi-factor authentication, really there to help prevent against brute force attacks, man-in-the-middle attacks, something that your username and password, something that you have, typically a mobile device that you authenticate on. Again, just really locking down and making sure that you have that secure access. The next piece is around isolating backups. So anyone that's been in data protection, especially on premises for any period of time, understands the importance of physical separation, right? They might hear this be called the 3-2-1 rule, whereby you have 3 copies of your data, 2 different types of media. One of those is off-site. The off-site, that is that physical separation of data. But that's not necessarily easy to do within the cloud because it's all abstracted and all looks like one thing. We're not exactly sure what it is what we're looking at from an infrastructure perspective underneath the covers. How do we do that in the cloud? And it's really through logical separation. And how does Google deem logical separation? It's through projects. So utilizing a tool that can support things like cross-project, cross-region, and even cross-platform backup and recovery is going to help isolate your protection data from your production data. So if one set is compromised, the other isn't. And again, this is helping overcome one of those key issues with snapshots. And by cross-platform, I do mean to a different cloud or to maybe on-premises. And then the final piece is going to be around encryption, AES 256-bit encryption. We're seeing exfiltration attacks coming up on the rise, whereby these attackers are realizing, hey, these people aren't paying the ransom because they're just recovering from a clean backup. So instead, I'm going to hold the data to ransom in a different way. If you don't pay me my ransom, I'm going to leak this sensitive information or personally identifiable information out on the internet. That's going to put you in breach of compliance, big fines, big inspections. So encrypting that data, so even if they do have access to it, they can't necessarily read that data and or post it, share it. And I would say currently not available on Google Cloud Platform, but immutability is also exceptionally important as well, making sure that you have that worm state so you can ensure your data integrity. So the next piece is around how to optimize those costs. So we spoke about the overspend piece. What are some of the best practices that we can utilize, again, through a data protection lens within Google Cloud to help us keep our costs low without sacrificing things like performance, service level objectives, or compliance? So the first one is really just automate the life cycle of your data. We constantly hear about snapshot sprawl, where snapshots are created, and once they've been created, they're kind of forgotten about, and these organizations just keep paying for these, for the space on disk for these, for months and months and months, years and years and years. If you can automate the life cycle of these snapshots from creation through to deletion, that's ultimately going to mean that you are not keeping data that you do not need for any longer on that expensive storage, and that's going to help you control your costs. Now, some of you might say, well, I am in the healthcare space and I am mandated to keep backups for a minimum of 7 years. 7 years worth of snapshots on persistent disk is still incredibly expensive. And that's where the next piece comes in, being able to tier to lower cost storage. So Google Cloud has object storage, standard storage, nearline storage, archive storage. Being able to tier those snapshots as image-based backups onto this object storage, and the varying different classes of object storage, is going to help you reduce your bill significantly. Even the most performant level of object storage is less than half the cost of persistent disk. And you start to get down into archival class object storage, where we're talking about fractions of a cent per gigabyte per month. That all of a sudden becomes much, much more cost effective. So you can meet 7 years worth of retention, but be paying fractions of a cent per gigabyte instead of 5 cents per gigabyte per month. And when we take an image-based backup, we can also do things like compression. But now I remember that's a little bit later on this slide, so I'll come back to that. One key consideration as well is just around the performance of object storage here. Especially archival class, it can take days to recover from. So really what we're trying to do is only meet retention requirements with this, not recovery requirements. So we advocate for a true tiering strategy. Keep snapshots for a week, 2 weeks, a month. As they get older and the chance or likelihood of needing to recover from that snapshot diminishes, move it over to object storage. And as it gets older and older and the likelihood that we need to recover from becomes less and less, we can put it on that less performance storage without necessarily worrying. Proactive calculation is also very important. So just understanding how much data protection is going to cost you before you get your first bill is exceptionally important. There's storage, there's transactions, there's data transfers, compute involved as well with data protection. So just getting an idea of all of the costs associated with data protection before you implement a policy is going to help avoid that bill shock, as well as helping you proactively align your spend with your service level objectives. And then other considerations, I mentioned compression. Taking an image-based backup then does allow you to do things like compression. So you could do 2-to-1 compression and reduce the size of the file by half, therefore the size of the storage by half. You've got change block tracking as well, so only reading the blocks that have changed since the last snapshot. So you're not doing a full backup each and every single time. And then ephemeral instances. What I mean by this is the data movers that actually live on compute engine virtual machines and execute data protection and data recovery tasks, making sure that those are ephemeral, they're transient, they are only instantiated as and when they are needed, and they are automatically terminated when they are not, again, to help keep those compute expenditures low. And then finally, the fast, reliable recovery piece, because ultimately backup is all about recovery, right? That's why we're protecting the data, and we want something that's very quick, very reliable. So again, the first piece is all around automating processes. So as I mentioned before, if we want to do a file level recovery for a compute engine VM from a snapshot, we have to, create a new instance, create a new volume, connect those two together, boot it, mount the image. Then we can finally upload the snapshot, browse for our file, download that locally, and then we have to tear everything down, uninstall, destroy, so on and so forth. So automating that process is going to make things a lot easier and a lot quicker as well. The next piece is really around flexibility of recovery. So whether you want to do a full instance recovery, whether that is a Cloud SQL for MySQL database or a compute engine virtual machine, right down to file and folder level recovery as well. If it's only a specific file or folder, don't recover the entire machine. Just restore the file and folder. It'll be a lot quicker and a lot cheaper. And then that really brings into consideration things like, where do you want to recover that to? Do you want to do that in place of the existing file or folder on the existing machine? Do you want to do it in place of the existing machine? Do you want to do it as a new machine, or do you want to download it locally? And then do you want to do that to a different project, different region, or potentially even different platform as well? We are seeing organizations doing cross-cloud recovery or cloud recovery back on premises. And the final piece around file and folder level recovery is e-discovery. How easy is it to find that file or folder that you're looking for? And I know that AZ has some excellent stuff lined up in the demo to show you just how easy that can be. So that kind of rounds out those best practices and how to overcome those limitations of snapshots. Veeam absolutely does have its own Google Cloud native backup and recovery product called Veeam Backup for Google Cloud. There are a number of other options out there. My biggest piece of advice to you is make sure you are utilizing all of those best practices, because it is going to give you that best-in-class recovery. But when it comes to Veeam Backup for Google Cloud, again, it is a native policy-based backup and recovery tool for compute engine VMs and Cloud SQL for MySQL databases. And you've got very, very fast and reliable recovery options to help you against things like accidental deletion, ransomware, which are the leading data loss scenarios. And it's all without compromise. And I think that that's really going to come clear when we dive into the demo. So I'm going to transition you off to AZ. In fact, before we do that, let's have a look at some of these questions. What are the primary differentiating considerations for Google Cloud backups versus Azure and AWS backups? Great question, Paul. Really appreciate that one coming in. Keep them coming. All of these best practices apply to AWS and Azure as well, and they're all achievable within AWS and Azure. The key thing to really understand is that it is just the terminology that varies between platform. So here in Google Cloud Work, when I'm talking about isolating backups, I'm talking cross-project backups. In AWS, it's cross-account backups. They deem accounts as security boundaries. In Azure, it is cross-subscription for the same reason. But everything else, all of this just applies like for like. It's again just different terminology. Azure is Active Directory. You've got IAM for AWS and Google Cloud. You've got things like Key Management Service for encryption in AWS, Azure Key Vault and Azure. So again, all of these principles align. It's just really different terminology. So I hope that answers your question, Paul. All right, AZ, over to you, my friend. Walk us through a demo.
All right, thank you so much, Sam. Well, actually, we had a few questions, but I replied to them all. So thank you so much, guys, for taking your time to write them and to be interested in this conversation, this topic. So what I'm going to do right now is to share my screen, which is this one. And Sam, if you don't mind, just tell me that the screen is up there and you can see what's happening. I'm showing Google Cloud Marketplace over there.
Yep, I can see the main marketplace page just fine.
All right. So what do you think, Sam, if we are going to go there and search for Veeam? Oh, okay. What are we going to find?
I think we're going to find a couple of different options that you have when it comes to protecting Google Cloud workloads and potentially even other workloads outside of Google Cloud.
You're spot on, Sam. Okay, so let's click on Veeam Backup for Google Cloud. And basically that's that. This is the way to find our solution out there. This is something that, Sam already mentioned a few times and had a bunch of slides about it. But this is where your journey with Veeam Backup for Google Cloud would start. And obviously the deployment process would look like that. You'll have to provide a deployment name, select the data center, the zone where you're going to have this solution deployed, and then define a couple of, entry points, I would say, the size of the disk, decide on the networking rules and the traffic, whether it's going to be a lot or not. But this is basically it. At the end of this page, you will be able to see the deploy button over here. And in a couple of minutes, once you get it all configured, it is going to be deployed in your project. And then whenever you access your data over there, so let me show you that I've got a bunch of VM instances. So it's going to be yet another VM instance inside of your project over here. All right, so what if we just copy this external IP address and try to go there? All right. So this is Veeam Backup for Google Cloud. I have already deployed it. I've run a couple of, I've configured a couple of policies. So what I'm going to do right now is to log in and to show you the application itself. Okay, so let's take a couple of seconds to see what's happening here. I've got a pretty fancy dashboard saying something about my sessions in the last 24 hours, about the amount of storage I'm using, in some other information, which I really like because it gives me a good overview of things that's, that actually happening with my VBGCP installation. All right, so with that, let's go and check what I had to do in order to configure the solution for the first backup policy run. Basically, we've got kind of a game system over here. So you've got to get 3 checks. You've got to add the project where you're going to operate and what kind of data you're going to protect. And then you've got to add the worker, which is a temporary proxy that is going to be used whenever you backup or recover data. And then repository. And Sam already mentioned that, Google Storage buckets to store your backups. And we do prefer multi-layer protection approach. So what we do is we work with snapshots, we work with backups, extract the data from snapshots and put it into the backups. And then we even sometimes help you to get the data from Google Cloud and bring it to any other cloud or to on-premises. Doesn't really matter. So let's quickly jump through those 3 steps just to show you that it's really easy to configure basically anything. Okay, so here under permissions, you can see that I've got it enabled for one of my projects already. I'm going to check permissions, and basically this is where you see the granular list of permissions that I need in order to run data protection policies inside of this project. So it's really granular. It doesn't have to be, full admin with everything. It could be, just someone that you particularly create. And speaking of that, we do recommend to create a service account that would do all of those things. And if you had any missing permissions, you would have been able to basically generate a script, which later you can copy and paste into the Google Cloud console and then run it. And it would automatically create a service account with all of those permissions required. So that's really easy. All right. As I mentioned, the second step for me was to create the configure workers. Let me show you what it is. I just click add, and then I select the region where I'm going to protect my data, or basically where I'm going to work. Let's say Oregon. I'm not sure if I've got anything configured there, but let's go for that. Yeah, probably no VPCs. So let me take another region. North Virginia. I'm pretty sure I've got something over there. So you select the availability zone, and then we're going to ask you about the VPC, virtual private cloud. I've got one, so I'm going to apply, and then decide on a subnet and firewall rule, basically to ensure that you've got 443 port open to accept HTTPS connections, which is really handy. This is it. So whenever the backup operation happens, we're going to temporarily deploy a small Veeam instance over there, which will help us to handle the traffic coming from the original Veeam instance into the, let's say the bucket, the storage bucket, where we're going to store the data into. And whenever the recovery operation happens, it's going to be the same. As for the repositories themselves, okay, you can see that I've got 2 of them. One is just the regular one, and another one is archive repository. You can see over here the folders, the region, the storage class that I'm using, and I have disabled encryption just because it's my demo environment. But essentially, I would definitely recommend to enable it by default over there whenever you create repository. Speaking of creation, let me show you how easy it is to create yet another one. You can see that I've got, actually, I don't think I've got those keys anymore. So if I click next, I might be getting an error. No, I've got one. Okay, so it's cool. So I have to select the bucket, the project, the bucket inside of the project, and then I can go ahead and create a new folder, define which storage class I'm going to use, and this is basically it. So whenever we're going to attempt the second layer of protection, which is taking a backup of that Veeam instance or the MySQL database, I'm going to touch on later. It would be handy to use that repository whenever needed. And then okay, I'm going to click next, and just to show you that encryption is here. You can enable it here and be happy about it. Let me cancel it for now, and then back to getting started page. That's really it. So you have provided enough permissions for this solution to run in your project, and then you have configured the workers and repositories. All right. So after all of those operations, which are done, you can go ahead and create a backup policy. This is something that I'm going to click right on, and we have automatically went to the management and policies, to the main backup console, which is here. You can see that I've got 2 tabs over there under policies. I've got Veeam and Cloud SQL. So if I click at Veeam, but it's enabled by default, you can see that I've got one policy called apples, and I've got a bunch of things happening with this backup policy. Let's see if I've got any errors. I did have some of them, like previously in September. Any warnings? There used to be some warnings, but then you can see that those 4 particular icons would be responsible for the backups, snapshots, archivals, and health checks of my data, which is really cool because you can, just drill down and see what's going on with your policies. All right, so let me show you what's inside of that policy. Basically, this is where you have to select the project again. You can double check permissions if you need. Everything looks good to me. Then you have to define the region where you're going to operate. So my policy operates in Northern Virginia region. I'm going to cancel it. And this is the resources part where you have to specify what exactly you're going to protect. Either all resources or some specific resources. You can use the tags, the labels by default. So whenever you've got a new VM instance created over there, you can automatically assign a new existing label over there, and it would be automatically added to the backup policy. Or you can go as granular as the VM instance name. So my policy runs for this particular Linux server that I have over here, and yeah, it is on. Whenever I click next on the targets, you can see that I've got the backups enabled, and the backups would be kind of having 2 layers for me. So the backups would be stored in the standard storage, standard repository, and then I have the backup archiving also enabled, which would long-term perspective, which would really help me to to manage my costs associated with running of this backup policy. If I click next, you can see I've got the scheduling options, and this is really flexible. This is basically, go insane and do the schedule pretty much the way you want. So I've got my daily schedule only enabled, but it doesn't have to be this way. It could be weekly, monthly, yearly. It's up to you. And then whenever you've got one of those enabled, you can go and edit settings of that particular schedule. So now you can see that I've got, some of them snapshots happening once per 2 hours, and then I've got 4 backups within a day at some specific hours, which is, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I run this policy every day, and then I have to define retention. Defining that would actually, I'm going to change those numbers in just a second, but defining those retention settings would be really helpful for you to be, compliant with your policies, and at the same time to manage your costs, because later you might find yourself in, that trouble. You've got a lot of, let's say, money spent on running that backup policy, and you might need to adjust the settings. So to illustrate that, let's check this number. So for right now, with all of those settings configured for my policy, it would cost me just over $6 per month to run it. But what if we do it this way? 24 backups and 24 snapshots. I'm going to apply, and I'm going to see, actually 6. You see the number is different, 628. Okay, I'm pretty sure I could make it even bigger. Okay, what about months? I remember it's tiny Linux server, so the expense is not that high. Anyways, sometimes it matters, and sometimes you need to, you would be surprised to see that number, and you'll need to go and to adjust those settings. Okay, so let me come back to the default ones. Let's click next, and let's see. I don't think you actually need to spend much time there. Okay, this is basically where you have to configure the retries of the policy, not the text sexy. But what about the health check? This is really cool because the health check, allows us to check the data blocks in backup files and perform the CRS check, which is really cool to make sure that whenever the data landed the storage, it's actually recoverable. So whenever something happens to you, disaster recovery strikes, and then you've got to recover something, you would be actually able to do so. Really cool. And let's click on the next to see the cost estimation. So right now you can see how much money I'm spending, on all of those operations in particular. And well, this is pretty, I guess, I could, if I were in trouble, I could work on the backups to make the backup schedule a little bit more light, I would say. So I'd be paying less for this policy to run. Okay, so that's basically it. The next step would be to review the summary of the policy and then to see, when it's going to be running next time. As you can see, I've been running it. I've got some success already. And just before we are here, before I go to protect the data and I show some recovery, let me quickly click on Cloud SQL, where I have another policy, which is oranges. So I've got apples and oranges over here, and then I can click Edit, and you see that the policy configuration wizard is pretty much the same. You have to define the source of data, the MySQL database, where you're going to, what kind of data protection method you're going to use, how frequent you're going to run this policy, some of the processing options specific to MySQL, and then you will get the same cost estimation. So probably I can click on processing options to see the difference between this policy and the regular policy for a Veeam instance. But this is basically where we ask you whether you're going to use staging server or to use the production instance, and defining on that. And I guess I don't have that much time to talk about it, but definitely we have this information available in user guide of this product, so you know the difference about it. Let's click on cancel, and now the backups are done, the snapshots are done, sometimes the archives are done. So what we can do with this information? Obviously, we have to click on protected data to see what's available to us. Okay, as you can see, I've got this VM in particular, 18 different restore points. Okay, so let's click on 18. And now you can see that I've been, running it for some time, and the retention is in place. But then whenever I need something about this policy, right? I need any, recovery operation, I can come back and click on restore. So you see 3 different recovery types. I can go ahead and recover the whole instance, just particular disk, or perform the file level recovery. For either of those, I would be just clicking there and then selecting that, yes, I need to recover it. And then whenever I click finish, we start mounting the contents of that backup. And then we will give you a nice URL in a couple of minutes over here. So you'll be able to browse that particular, since I launched the file level recovery wizard, you'll be able to browse that particular VM instance yourself and find all of those files and folders that you need to recover. I'm not going to wait until that, but this is it. Now you can see it's getting ready, and yeah, it will take a couple of seconds probably. All right, so this is kind of, this solution, like quick and dirty and general overview. You have to configure, you have to deploy it, you have to configure it, and then you run the backup policies to protect your data, and then you run the recovery operations to recover the data. So that's really easy. But to provide a different experience right now, I'm going to show you different console, which is something that we typically, it's our flagship product. It's Veeam Backup and Replication. So typically people have been installing it on premises, and they used to protect a lot of VMware, and they still protect a lot of VMware. And then we added Hyper-V protection, and then we added the physical machines protection, and then we also somehow integrated cloud products into this console. So where I'm going with that, it might be really helpful whenever you have a hybrid environment. So you've got, one of those different environments, and you've got GCP or AWS Azure environments for the matter as well. So what you can do from here, you can navigate yourself to the backup infrastructure right there. And under the managed servers, I know it's going to be a little bit sluggish, but you can see that I've got various platforms where I have some data. And speaking of GCP, it's really easy. So I've got GCP over here. Whenever I click, right click on in this window, I can add an appliance, which would either register a new appliance in GCP Cloud for me whenever I provide my credentials over there, or I can, connect to the existing one. If I went like previously, if I had, if I use the same way, I went to Google Cloud Marketplace and I deployed an appliance over here. So since I was already showing you this appliance, you can see that I've got it added here as well. How can we check that? So if we come back to the Google, to Veeam Backup for Google Cloud, under support information, license information, you should be able to see the license type managed by Veeam Backup and Replication. And how do I manage it? Let's come back here. So I have edited over here, and now, they, from time to time, they exchange information, which means that, I can, I can remove the appliance from here, I can even destroy it, or I can go ahead and see what types of data it has been, protecting. You can see this Apple policy over here, the orange apples and oranges policies over there. So it got some information about my, data scope and how I protected it. So you can see I can even right click and perform some recovery operation over here. What else? So that was the tab showing just the snapshots from those apples and oranges backup policies. But what else? If I click on external repository, and this is, well, I know it might be not that intuitive, but anyways, this is how we designed it. So typically external repository, Veeam Backup application used to be installed on premises, right? And external repository would mean anything external to this on-premises environment. So external repository would also mean the GCP and AWS and Azure cloud repositories. So what you can see is I've got the Apple's policy over here with 15 different recovery points. Okay, and if I right click on that my VM instance that I used to protect, then I've got a bunch of options and what I can do with it, starting from instant recovery. So now my data is essentially inside of Google Cloud, but then I can instantly recover the data using my on-premises environment, VMware, vSphere, or Microsoft Hyper-V. So it doesn't really matter, but that's really easy. If I want to recover just particular files, you can see over here I've got also a Notion that is a Linux environment, and then I could have just chosen it and go through the recovery procedures to kind of extract the data from the cloud and to present you with a view of the data file system and what you can recover with it. And also my favorite part over here, I can recover that GCP VM instance instantly, well, almost instantly, because we still need to transfer the data to AWS or to Azure. So leveraging cross-cloud recovery. This is really helpful because one of our most powerful stories is to be storage agnostic and to be vendor agnostic and to provide you with tools that won't limit you. So if one day you decide to go from one cloud to another, this would be the option for you, and this would be really easy to extract your data and to put it into different clouds. And if you think about that, well, this is actually a powerful story. I've been reading a lot of cases in internet, and my favorite one is definitely City of Dallas, when they wanted to get out of Azure, but then they spent like a few years and they could not. So anyways, using us, it's really easy. So you have the data over there, and you don't want to waste the data, to miss it. So go ahead and just copy it to your on-premises environment, or go ahead and copy it to any other cloud environment over there. So yeah, really powerful story, I guess. With that, I think, I have covered everything I wanted to. And so I'm coming back to Sam to see if we've got any questions. But yeah, generally speaking, just, feel free to ask me anything, because I'll be out there also watching them. So back to you, Sam.
Awesome. Thanks so much, AZ. So that was a fantastic demo, not just showing, the whole Google Cloud backup and recovery component, but how it can all be integrated within, your entirety of your hybrid multi-cloud environment, but then also mobilize that data across all of the different infrastructures and platforms. It truly is kind of up to you how you want to take it on. The next few slides, given that we're running up on time, I'm not necessarily going to go through, but this is just a good reference architecture for what AZ was showing and how some of the best practices are implemented. This is for the Google Cloud only piece, and then this is how it all integrates within the entirety of your environment. And then also just want to say that you can get this product for free on the Google Cloud Platform Marketplace. So right at the beginning of AZ's demo, he showed, just searching for it on the Google Cloud Marketplace. You can do that for free. We let you protect up to 10 instances, no limitations on features, no limitations on recovery. And that's 10 free forever. It's not just 30 days. Veeam are top-rated products across all the clouds and on-premises, so strongly encourage you to do that there. So let's have a look at some of these additional questions that came through. Okay. Hanif asks, do these principles apply to all cloud backup solutions or only confined to GCP? They apply to all cloud backup solutions. There are some differentiators between some of the different platforms. So one of the big ones that I mentioned earlier was the lack of immutability in Google, although I know that they are diligently working on that. So yes, that is going to be something that we will support as and when it comes available. And it will be supported in our AWS and Azure equivalent solutions in our next release. Guy asks, how do you handle backups within Google Cloud BigQuery as a cloud data warehouse? This is a fantastic question. So we currently do not support BigQuery. It is Compute Engine virtual machines and the attached persistent disk, as well as Cloud SQL for MySQL. The next release coming will expand that out to also include PostgreSQL, but currently no support for BigQuery in data warehouses. But great question. I see a number of other questions that have come through. But yeah. AZ, I believe that you answered these, like some from Thomas.
Yeah, I think
you did a great job of answering a lot of the questions that were coming in as you went through the demo. Can I ask you, I saw a couple of questions come in about licensing. Could you add a little clarity on how the universal license works? And a follow-up question to that, are folks able to upgrade from free to paid?
Yeah, good question. So the universal license is just a standard license that you can procure on a subscription basis through Veeam, and it is installed into our flagship product, Veeam Backup and Replication. And then that enables you to then protect pretty much any and all workloads that are covered within the Veeam platform. So vSphere, Hyper-V, Nutanix AHV, Red Hat, virtualization, Windows servers, Linux servers, workstations, Oracle Solaris, AIX, NAS, and then, of course, our cloud workloads. So everything that's covered under AWS, Azure, and Google is all licensed within that product. And then as you move data around, so let's say you did what AZ said and migrated one machine from on-premises to Google Cloud or from one cloud to another, that license is just going to intelligently follow that workload. You don't have to go out and procure new licenses for a new piece of software. You don't have to do any kind of license management or support ticket. You just move the data and it will intelligently and automatically just assign itself to that. And then going from free to paid is just as easy. Yes, you can use the free edition. If you just want to buy a standalone license, we call it the BYOL license, bring your own license, just for Google Cloud Backup within Google Cloud. You can absolutely do that. Or you can connect it to Veeam Backup and Replication, as AZ showed in his demo, at which point it will start consuming that universal license.
I love that. Well, Sam and AZ, thank you so much for the information that you've given us today. AZ, I love, as you said, the quick and dirty demo was very informative. And I know the audience got a lot out of it. I can see that there's still questions coming in, but I think we're a little short on time. So we're going to have to leave it there. Before you guys take off, Sam, AZ, if someone out there has just totally fallen in love with Veeam, is ready to dive in, or wants to ask some more questions, what is their very first step? How do they get started here?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say if you want more information, want a more personalized demo or anything, I would just say on the veeam.com pages, you can fill out have a systems engineer contact me. So an engineer will contact you, can set up that demo, talk you through any more of your questions. Or as AZ showed, like the product is so intuitive and easy to use. You can just go out to the marketplace, start using the free edition. We're not going to be charging you for that. So get hands-on. For me, that's how I learn best and how I learn to use these products, just diving right in. So I would say those are the two best options there.
Yeah, I think that is certainly the best way to get started. AZ, anything else you want to add to that for somebody that's looking to get rolling?
Yeah, well, just I'm thinking whether we have like enough time just for one question, because
Yes,
Kenneth
yeah.
asked something that is really, really cool. So Kenneth is asking about the ransomware that has been able to ever encrypt Veeam backup file, or actually I was asking about encrypting or decrypting the backup file or the backup repository in the past. Encrypting, I get it now. So obviously, yes, basically any ransomware will, and I know it's going to be scary, but, Veeam backup file, generally speaking, if you're talking about especially on-premises environment where you've got the file or the block level storage. So the backup file is just a file, just like any other file out there. So if you've got ransomware that is trying to actually to work with your file system, it's going to encrypt it. So yeah, it's been a lot of cases, but here's the thing, Kenneth, and I really want you to follow that. So you have to ensure that your data protection against ransomware is a complex and the actual like well-designed architecture, right? So because of that, you want to have the multiple copies of data. That's for sure, that if one copy is damaged, you've got another one. You want to work with the least privileges levels, and you don't want to join a Veeam backup application to let that VM to be joined to the domain. So it's like a lot of those practices over there, and we've got a lot of white papers and best practices articles written about it. So there are multiple ways to work on that, but well-designed architecture will definitely help you. So yeah, thank you for letting me answer that, Jess.
No, I love that.
Sorry to keep going, but I just want to build on that piece one more. The immutability piece is so key for that. Immutability, it's not mutable. It cannot be changed. We have a number of options for immutability. Those are going to get even more broad in V12, which is our upcoming release. But, immutability induces that worm state. Write once, read many. So once that file is written, it cannot be changed. It cannot be deleted. You can read it as many times as you want, provided that you have the right permissions, like AZ says, but you cannot change it. And that is like the key thing to help stop encrypting those backup files.
I love that. You guys have gone rogue, and I love it. Great answers and an awesome last minute question, Kenneth. Good ask and discussion there. AZ and Sam, thank you so much. This has been so much fun chatting with you both today.
Pleasure is mine.
Yeah, very much enjoyed it. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining.
All right. Well, and the fun is not over yet, folks. We're going to sneak in a very quick prize giveaway. Before I do that, I do want to remind you all to go explore that handout section of your webinar console. So please do click on that Veeam link, save that tab for later. Make sure you've got access to all the resources that are there. As Sam was just saying, the best way to really get to know a solution is to dig into it. So book that free demo, get to know a little bit, and explore Veeam a little bit more on your own. Now, I know you can see it up on the screen. You're ready. You're locked in and loaded. Here we go. So we are going to give away a $300 Amazon gift card. I'm going to remind you one more time that you do need to be here present live at the webinar in order to qualify to win. So today's winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Jeff Fisher of Washington. Jeff Fisher of Washington, congratulations. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar wraps today. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Veeam for making this webinar possible. A giant thank you to both Sam and to AZ for guiding us through such an interesting conversation today. It was so interactive and fun. On that note, a huge high five and a special thank you to all of you out there who attended today for making this possible and for asking those questions, posting those comments, and really diving into this topic with us. Today was a great example of the interesting and in-depth learning that can happen when we all pool our information and engage in these sorts of discussions together. So thank you so much for coming and being a part of that. I know that I have learned a ton from this session today. I am fired up and ready to go into the weekend. All the Friday vibes. I love it. I hope you are too. I hope that you all enjoyed your time here with us. I can't wait to see you all at a webinar again soon. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.